Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Alrighty, roll. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Thanks for being here. I hope you're feeling well. And we're going to continue with the Lankavatara today. And I'm going to do a bit of reading today because I've been setting you up in the last couple of videos, trying to give you imagery, a picture of mind that is distinctly a step removed from the actual world. So there's the universe. We all know it exists. There's karma, which is energy with a component of action, right? This is karma. Everything is karma. Everything, all mass in the entire universe is manifested, created from energy, is itself energy in various states. I mean, this is Einstein. This is not me saying it. This is the whole classical physics, particle physics, science world agrees on these facts, that all of this that we experience is manifest of energy in various states of agitation. What is energy in kinetic motion? What is momentum, right? We talk about particles, but what science really says a particle isn't like a package you get from Amazon. A particle is a definition of states of energy within or extended into or out of a field, like a magnetic field, right? If you hold two powerful magnets away from each other, you feel that field. You don't see it. But if that field was strong enough to collect atoms, electrons, protons out of the air, because it would modify their energetic behavior, then you could see instantiations between the two magnets in the magnetic field. So imagine, this is you and I. We're made of the same stuff. So yeah, when we talk about it's my karma, we're talking about the entire universe, just channeled as it is in a particular way, which we perceive as an I. And here is in the language the very tripwire. I keep saying and hammering experience it. Well, what is experience? Is experience this, a book? Is experience a pad of paper? Is experience this little brass thing? What is experience? You must understand experience is the work of the mind. And this is the rub. This is where he's focusing all of his energy trying to get people to understand that the mechanism of experience, brain, mind, eyes, ears, touch, smell, the senses, the consciousnesses. In Buddhism, the senses are conscious things. They're not, you can't pick up something and say, it has nose, it has eyes. We say a potato has eyes, but we know that those eyes aren't perceiving eyes. We know that they're conscious. We describe consciousnesses when we talk about our senses. Especially when we turn inward and say that that sixth sense is something that goes on in the mind. Maybe the brain computer assesses and categorizes stuff, but the brain computer doesn't associate feelings and consciousnesses. That's an emergent property of all the comparisons and categorizations that the brain is making. And that's why in Buddhism we conceive of the mind as not an organ, as not of physical, but as experience, which is not a thing. It's a state of awareness. And that state of awareness, that brain and mind mechanism, sees the world at large in the way it calculates that world. There's a systemic break there. There's the world, and there's the perception of the world. And as soon as that steps in, as soon as the mind steps into the perception of the world, then the mind creates a reality separate from the world reality. This is a very subtle point, but it's a critical cliff of understanding. Because it is in the space between that perceptive reality and actual reality that we fall prey to attachment, suffering, anxiety, ownership. You see the ownership I keep talking about, the possession? It's the mind possessing, the mind owning. Everything we see or we consciously input into the mind becomes then something we have. We talk about my house, my cat, my town, my country, my flag. Where is it yours? Who is claiming it? This is all activity of the mind of distinctions and ownership. And now that I've defined it, it's mine. Even if you don't say that out loud, that is our process of perception. And our brain is actively going, okay, that's a that. Well, how's it fit into this? What category can I put that in? What blah, 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 blah. And we're in samsara. That's where samsara occurs. Do you see how samsara is a condition of mind? Okay, so I've talked about this a lot. Now I'm going to use the words, because now you know what I'm talking about. I'm going to use the words of the Lankavatara and read them straight out, although I'll try to resist reading the Christian nomenclature in here, so that you can, what I want you to realize as I read this, and there's a nice little, near the back here, in Sagatankam chapter, that really synopsizes it. But this is a dialogue between Mahamati, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, and Shakyamuni Buddha. And as I said before, this Bodhisattva is very educated, very experienced, but is still kind of stuck in the Arhat world. He hasn't fully embraced his Bodhisattva practice. He's still not fully getting it. They call him a Bodhisattva here, so I'll give him that he's a Bodhisattva. He's achieved that level of understanding and experiencing the Dharma, he's trying to course in his Buddha wisdom as a monk amongst the people. That's a bodhisattva. But he's not quite there. And so he asks Shakyamuni a critical question. He's listened to all this teaching, and still, maybe like you and I, he's not quite convinced. I'm having trouble separating the real from the real. The real that I perceive as something that is essentially not real, because it's a perception of real. So there's a removal there. And suddenly the rhetoric starts to dawn on him. And so here he goes. At that time, Mahamati, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, again said to Shakyamuni, "Pray tell me about the attainment of self-realization by noble wisdom." In other words, there's a perception of self, and that perception of self is created by my mind. But there is a self, but there is a me, isn't there? Or am I just not existent? Which is real? The real me, or the self-perceived me? I'm having trouble. Words are getting in the way here, right? So keep listening. By noble wisdom, a different type of wisdom, a wisdom of the real, not the perceived real, or even the wisdom that what your reality is a perceived reality is a step along the way, isn't it? So this is the word salad we're trying to unravel, which does not belong to the path and the usage of the philosophers, which is devoid of all such predicates as being and non-being, oneness and otherness, bothness and not bothness, existence and non-existence, eternity and non-eternity, which has nothing to do with the false imagination, nor with individuality and generality, which manifests itself as the truth of highest reality, which, going up continuously by degrees the stages of purification, enters upon the stage of Tathagatahood, which, because of the original vows, unattended by any striving, will perform its works in infinite worlds like a gem reflecting a variety of colors, and which is manifested, when one perceives how, signs of individuation rise in all things as one realizes the course and realm of what is seen of mind itself. And thereby I and other Bodhisattva Mahasattvas are enabled to survey things from the point of view which is not hampered by marks of individuality and generality, nor by anything of the false imagination, and may quickly attain supreme enlightenment and enable all beings to achieve the perfection of all their virtues. Did you get it? That whole word salad is saying exactly what I was saying earlier. The discrepancy between reality and imagined reality, which does all of the work. The mind does all of the work of instantiating this separate reality, enduring, possessing, holding on to that reality. That's in the mind. It's not out there. And eventually, all of it, real and imagined real, decays and dissolves. So this is a critical question, because it's the door to enlightenment. It is the clear, all-knowing wisdom that is there to be grasped, uninvented, as the mind is invented and invents constantly, that wisdom, that opening door, that aha that transcends the mind only perception to the perception, the actual experience of reality, the gohanzon of understanding, perception, mind. So Shakyamuni says, well done, Mahamati. And again, well done. Indeed, Mahamati. You've hit the nail on the head. That's what I'm talking about. Because of your compassion for the world, for the benefit of many people, for the happiness of many people, for the welfare, benefit, happiness of many people, both of celestial beings and humankind, Mahamati, you present yourself before me and make this request. Therefore, Mahamati, listen well and truly and reflect, for I will tell you. Assuredly, said Mahamati, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, and gave ear to Shakyamuni. Shakyamuni said this to him, Mahamati, since the ignorant and the simple-minded, not knowing that the world is what is seen of mind itself, cling to the multitudinousness of external objects. In other words, they cling to their mind's version of external objects, even though they're not external, they're created in the mind. There is external objects, but they cling to the mind itself's version of external objects. It's not as explicit as it could be. But the understanding, perhaps in that time, the understanding was clearer. But to us, we're so information dense that we need things just completely granulated in order to go, I think I get that now. So let's continue. See, he says, what is seen of mind itself, they cling to the multitudinousness of external objects, cling to the notions of being and non-being, oneness and otherness, bothness and not bothness, existence and non-existence, eternity and non-eternity, as being characterized by self-nature, as though that's what's actually happening, which rises from discrimination. As I said earlier, this idea rises from a brain discriminating everything as individuation based on habit energy, karma, habit being the mind's constant imaginary repetition of what it thinks it knows, knowledge. You see how all that knowledge is false because it's created in the mind, not from actual experience. They are addicted to false imaginings. Attached, addicted, constantly repeat the knowledge they've gathered in their massive computer database of a brain without actually witnessing what's happening. Mahamati, it is like a mirage in which the springs are seen as if they were real. They are imagined so by the animals who, thirsty from the heat of the season, would run after them, not knowing that the springs are their own mental hallucinations. The animals do not realize that there are no such springs. They see the waves of heat rising above the sands of the desert, and their mind says, that looks like water. That's the nature of samsara. In the same way, how many times have you been in an argument or discussion, or read a book, or listened to a teacher, and thought, surely you understand, yeah, again with this, yeah. Only at some time later, maybe that next morning after you sleep on it, or maybe years later, you suddenly come across almost the same verbiage, or the same argument, or the same thought pattern, and you think to yourself, holy shit, that's totally wrong. Oh my goodness, I totally misunderstood that. How many times has that happened to you? And yet we still rely on that mechanism, so flawed as it is. But we have evidence. When we read about in Buddhism, we can go, oh crap, I get that. I get what he's talking about here. In the same way, Mahamati, the ignorant, and that doesn't mean stupid in this case, ignorant just means you don't know. The ignorant and simple-minded, who aren't capable of understanding, with their minds impressed by various erroneous speculations and discriminations, again that word, since beginningless time, with their minds burning with the fire of greed, anger, and folly, delighted in a world of multitudinous forms, with their thoughts saturated with the ideas of birth, destruction, and subsistence, not understanding well what is meant by existent and non-existent, by inner and outer, the ignorant and simple-minded fall into the way of grasping at oneness and otherness, being and non-being. Mahamati, it is like the city of the Gandharvas, which the unwitted take for a real city, though it is not so in fact. This city appears in essence owing to their attachment to the memory of a city preserved in seed from the beginningless time. Keep saying beginningless time. Karma is beginningless time. Karma is the instantiator, the primary instantiator of energy and work, energy and taking form of energy, forms of energy, creating mass. Mass begets time. Mass takes up space. Space is time. It takes up space-time. Beginningless time is pre-mass. It's simply energy. Unagitated energy. The fields, the quantum fields, are agitations in the energy. Science is almost there. Buddha knew this 3,000 years ago. This city is thus neither existent nor non-existent. It appears in the mind. In the same way, Mahamati, clinging to the memory, the vasana, of erroneous speculations and doctrines since beginningless time, they hold fast to the ideas such as oneness and otherness, being and non-being, and their thoughts are not at all clear about what is seen of mind only. Mahamati, it is like a man who, dreaming in his sleep of a country variously filled with women, men, elephants, horses, cars, pedestrians, villages, towns, hamlets, cows, buffaloes, mansions, woods, mountains, rivers, and lakes, enters into its inner apartments and is awakened. While awakened thus, he recollects the city and its inner apartments. What do you think, Mahamati? Is this person to be regarded as wise, who is recollecting the various unrealities he has seen in his dream? Mahamati says, indeed he is not, Shakyamuni. Shakyamuni continued, In the same way, the ignorant and simple-minded who are bitten by erroneous views and are inclined toward the philosophers do not recognize that things seen of the mind itself are like a dream and are held fast by notions of oneness and otherness, of being and non-being. See, if you take that as your paradigm, that there's a duality of self and other, then you're firmly in mind only. You don't understand that you, the components of mass, of energy that you are no different than a sun, a planet, a galaxy, a nebula, the entire universe. All of it, you, I, and it, other, are the same. All that differs is our mental cognition of this whole process of life. Mahamati is like the painter's canvas on which there is no depression nor elevation as imagined by the ignorant. Right? The canvas, the artist creates illusions of depth, perspective, something one in front of the other. Yet it's a flat plane with paint on it. In the same way, Mahamati, there may be in the future some people brought up in the habit energy, right? Habit to energy, tendencies, conditions. It's another way of saying the same thing he's been saying. Mentality and imaginations based on the philosophers' erroneous views, clinging to the ideas of oneness and otherness, of bothness and non-bothness, they may bring themselves and others to ruin. They may declare those people nihilists who hold the doctrine of no birth apart from the alternatives of being and non-being. They argue against cause and effect. They are followers of the wicked views whereby they uproot meritorious causes of unstained purity. They are to be kept far away by those whose desires for things excellent. They are those whose thoughts are entangled in the errors of self, other, and both. In the errors of imagining being and non-being, assertion and refutation, and hell will be their final refuge. Because if you're stuck in that perception of the world, you can't escape suffering. You can't escape anxiety, stress, pain, doubt. Because that's the world you haven't created. Your mind, has created. You've separated yourself completely from the process of life that is real, that is actual. You're not seeing it. And philosophers, like psychologists, these are people who dissect that mind. Their whole oeuvre of knowledge, quote unquote, comes from dissecting behavioral acts and states of mind based on the mind of illusion. So, of course, though they may be scholarly in studying that subject, the resolve and the product of that study is still mind only. Therefore, they've elaborated a way of staying stuck, and being stuck in that condition is, by definition in Buddhism, hell. You've cut yourself off from your own Buddhahood, from your own clarity of vision, and assigned your 6 lower worlds to be dominant and live within them, and therefore you will suffer. All that life is suffering. All life is suffering is a statement in that way. Madhamati, it is like the dim-eyed ones who, seeing a hairnet, would exclaim to the others, saying, it's wonderful, look, oh, honorable sirs. And the said hairnet has never been brought into existence. It's like having cataracts. You think you see a net. It is, in fact, neither an entity nor a non-entity, because it is seen and not seen. In the same manner, Mahamati, those whose minds are addicted to discriminations of the erroneous views as cherished by the philosophers, and who are also given up to the realistic ideas of being and non-being, oneness and otherness, bothness and not bothness, will contradict the good Dharma, ending in the destruction of themselves and others. Mahamati is like a firebrand wheel, which is no real wheel, but which is imagined to be of such character by the ignorant, but not by the wise. In the same manner, Mahamati, those whose minds have fallen into the erroneous views of the philosophers will falsely imagine in the rise of all beings oneness and otherness, bothness and not bothness. Mahamati is like those water bubbles in a rainfall, which have the appearance of crystal gems, and the ignorant, taking them for real crystal gems, run after them. Mahamati, there are no more than water bubbles. They are not gems, nor are they not gems, because of their being so comprehended by one party, and being not so comprehended by another. In the same manner, Mahamati, those whose minds are impressed by the habit energy of the philosophical views and discriminations will regard things born as non-existent, and those destroyed by causation as existent. Further, Mahamati, by setting up the 3 forms of measure and the 5 members of syllogisms, the philosophers make a discrimination that there is a reality existing by itself, which is attained by the realization of noble wisdom and devoid of the 2 svabhavas. This discrimination, however, is not right. So, lest my language made it sound, I'm thinking of what I've been saying so far, and it could sound like this. So let's see what he says. The Buddhist doctrine is this, Mahamati: when a psychological revulsion takes place in the yogins by the transcendence of the citta, manas, and vijnana, they cast off the dualistic discrimination of grasp and grasping in what is seen of mind itself, and entering the Tathagata stage, attain the realization of noble wisdom. And in this, there is no thought of existence and non-existence. Again, Mahamati, if there is the grasping of existence and non-existence in the realm attained by the yogins, there will be in them the grasping of an ego, a nourisher, a supreme soul, or a person. Again, Mahamati, the teaching pointing to self-nature, individuality, and generality of things is that of the transformation Buddha and not that of the Dharmata Buddha. Again, Mahamati, such teaching is meant for the ignorant, being in conformity with their mentality, their way of thinking and viewing things. Any establishment that favors the way of self-nature fails to reveal the truth of self-realization, to be attained by noble wisdom and the blissful abode of the samadhi. So do you get the distinction he's making there? It's like my way of saying that was that we are all the same energy. Not that there's a distinct other. Not that the mind creates one reality while there is another reality. Though you can get lost in those words very easily. The other reality is no reality at all. Now I'm starting to sound like Buddha. It is even when he says self-realization, it's not really a self-realization. It's a realization that there is no self, that everything is homogeneous. That the self being realized is the device of mind that is part of our samsaric energies. But that the only reason that samsaric energy, this apparatus as I call it, is here in order to perceive this collection of illusions that this apparatus is creating, getting past that apparatus to the essence of the entire process that is life, which is not distinct, discriminated from you and I. It is you and I. You and I, more appropriately, are it. Gosh, it's hard to get there from this wall of words. Mahamati, it is like the trees reflected in water. They are reflections and yet are not reflections. The trees are real figures and yet no figures. In the same manner, Mahamati, those who are impressed by the habit energy of the philosophical views carry on their discriminating regarding oneness and otherness, bothness and not bothness, being and non-being, for their minds are not enlightened as regards what is seen of mind only. Again, it's easy to read Nichiren, for instance, talking about the moon and the reflection of the moon in the water. The reflection of the moon in the water is not the moon. But this Shakyamuni is going even further, and he's saying, it's not that it's not the moon, it's that the moon is also a construction. That the water, the moon, and you are all the same perturbations of energy. It's all karma. But we have this glorious opportunity as this kind of instantiation of life we call human, that we have a mind that can witness the amazing nature of this process. That's it. Stop. Full stop. There's no self and other. There's no self. There's no other. It is a drama that our mind is creating solely for the pleasure of seeing the multitudinousness of karma, of this experience, of life, of these energies manifesting. It's like a coloring book. You apply crayon to images and make line drawings look like something else. You're not creating anything. You're just dancing in creation, which the comic book, the drawings, the crayon, and your perception of all that stuff is simply indications of, traces of. It is like a mirror reflecting all the colors and images as afforded by the conditions and without discrimination, and they are neither images nor not images, because they are seen as images and also as non-images. Because you know when you're coloring in the coloring book that you're not making an actual pirate, but you acknowledge that you're making an image of what your mind conceives of as a pirate. This is the play. This is the drama. These are the passions. And what we mistakenly call knowledge. It's just a bucket of experience. In Mahamati, they are discriminated forms of what is seen by the mind itself. It's like he knows what I'm going to say. Which are known to be the ignorant as images. In the same manner, Mahamati, oneness and otherness, bothness and not bothness, are reflected images of self-mind while they appear as if real. It is like an echo giving the sound of a human voice of a river or the wind. It is neither existent nor non-existent because it is heard as a voice and yet not as a voice. In the same way, the notions of being and non-being, oneness, otherness, bothness, not bothness, are the discriminations of the self-mind and habit energy, tendencies and conditions, arising from what? Karma. Over and over and over and over and over. I'm going to skip some here because you can read this as well as I. In order to attain the noble reality attainable within yourself, you should cast off the discriminations leading to the notions of birth, abiding, and destruction, arising, endurance, and dissolving, of oneness and other, bothness and not bothness, being and not being. Therefore it is said, the skandhas, of which the Vijnana is the fifth, resemble the reflections of the trees in water. They are to be regarded as maya and a dream. They are so by thought construction, make no discriminations. He's talking about the consciousnesses, the skandhas, the senses. They're the creators of this false world, but they're entertaining if you see them as such. This triple world resembles a hairnet or water in a mirage which is agitated. It is like a dream, maya, and by thus regarding it, one is emancipated. Like a mirage in the springtime, the mind is found bewildered. Animals imagine water, but there is no reality to it. Thus, the Vijnana seed is evolved and the world comes into view. The ignorant imagine it is born, just like the dim-eyed ones perceive things in the darkness. So when your senses create this ideation and discrimination of thingness, we think, oh, the world is born, or I am born into this world. The duality is in that very essence of perception. Since beginningless time, the ignorant are found transmigrating through the paths, enwrapped in their attachment to existence. As a wedge is introduced by another wedge, they are led to the abandonment of their wrappage. By regarding the world as always like a magically moving corpse or a machine, or like a dream or a lightning or a cloud, the triple continuation is torn asunder and one is emancipated. There is nothing of thought construction. It is like an image in the air. When they thus understand, all there is nothing to know. Whether is nothing but thought construction and name. Here there is nothing but thought construction and name. Well, the name is thought construction as well, right? You seek in vain for individual signs. The skandhas are like a hairnet wherein discrimination goes on. A world of multitudes is a hairnet, a vision, a dream, and the city of the Gandharvas, it is a wheel made by a firebrand, a mirage. It is a non-entity, only an appearance to people. Eternity and non-eternity, oneness too, bothness and not bothness as well. These are discriminated by the ignorant who are confused in mind and bound up by errors since beginningless time. In a mirror, in water, in an eye, in a vessel, and on a gem, images are seen, but it is them there are no images, but in them there are no images, i.e. realities, anywhere to take hold of. Like a mirage in the air, so it is a variety of things, mere appearance. They are seen in diversity of forms, but are like a child in a barren woman's dream. Further, and close to ending here. Further, Mahamati, the teachings of the Tathagata is free from the four statements. What are the four statements? That is, it is devoid of oneness and otherness, of bothness and not bothness, is free from being and non-being, assertion and refutation. The teachings of the Tathagatas is headed by the Four Noble Truths, the 12-fold chain of origination, the Nidana, and the eightfold noble path leading to emancipation. So we keep getting back to those basics. The religious the teachings of the Tathagatas Mahamati is not fastened to these ideas, the prakriti, the isvara, the causelessness, the spontaneity, atoms, time, and self-nature. Again, Mahamati, the Tathagatas, leading beings, successively forwards, like the leader of a caravan, in order to purify them from the two hindrances of passion and knowledge. Will establish them in the 108 statements of imagelessness and also in the characteristic distinctions of the vehicles of the stages of bodhisattvahood and of the constituents of enlightenment. So, I told you I was going to hit the 108, and it finally did. Why is that significant? Because in every definition, and he talks more about the 108 in this Lankavatara, but I think it's a very simple concept. Instead of thinking of the 108 beads as earthly desires, as defilements, as there are many papers and discussions on 108 issues of the world is what they are. They are the 108, how did he refer to it? The 108 statements of imaginationlessness and also the characteristic distinction of the vehicles. So the 108 is just an example, a statement to indicate the work of the skandhas. This six-fold sense organization of thingifying. And the 108 beads are just 108 different thingifying processes that we need to purge. That's the significance. And now I just want to read a little bit further because way at the end of the Lankavatara, following the currents of the karmic tendencies and conditions in dream form. Yeah, still talking. The whole book is about this. But I thought the rhetoric here was a little different because the end of the book is more of a direct summation using terms of Shakyamuni's. Let me just read it. I could just keep backing up and backing up. Yeah. Varieties of forms. Remember, the skandhas are the perceivers, the indicators, the discriminators of form. This is the beginning of illusion. The varieties of forms and figures are not produced by the primary elements, but the philosophers declare them to originate from the elements primary and secondary. Because the philosophers work within the realm of the skandhas. So to a philosopher, what the skandhas distinguish, discriminate, and identify is real. And this is what Shakyamuni is refuting. He's saying, no, you're in a created world. As the philosophers imagine causes other than the unborn, they do not understand, and because of stupidity, they uphold the dualism of being and non-being. Self and other. Their whole created science is based on self and other. There is a truth characterized by purity. It is united with the Sita, but disunited with the Manas. Sita being a word that is, and we can get into that too. This is one of those cases for study where you can go, I think I need to understand Sita better, right? Well, there's I think there's some stuff on that on threefoldlotus.com. It may not be explicitly on a button, though. It may be part of the skandhas. But the skandhas by Vasubandhu identify Sita as that pre-skandhas requisite. In other words, there has to be the formations of a cognitive or perceptive tool. The citas aren't identified as eye consciousness, ear consciousness, so on and so forth. Those come after Sita. There has to be first established the potential to observe. And from that precipitates these mechanisms created in order to observe, experience. There is a truth, tattva, characterized by purity. In its unity, it is united with Sita. In other words, our Buddha mind can perceive, but that's where it stops. Not as far as ability goes, but as far as perception goes. This is our opportunity in samsara. With our Buddha mind fully instantiated from karma, we can stop there and witness the passions and knowledge and dharma and all of the activities and manifestations of this huge explosion of life. What we don't do is take that mind and then start to identify with it. Identify stuff, thingness with it. Because the moment we do that, we slip into samsara and the self and other and the discriminations of everything. So it's above or before or whatever positioning works for you outside of the skandhas. And yet, it is what we can use as an earthbound, samsaric-bound reality to perceive correctly, purely, without attachment, without discriminating. But disunited with the manas. The manas are those samsaric visions of reality, constructed mind. And it abides with knowledge, but it's not the same knowledge. If karma is form, rupa, it will be the cause of the skandhas and the objective world. Beings without attachment will not be abiding, even in the world of formlessness. So karma, he identifies, that's your beginning instantiation of the life process. This is energy at work, energy in action, karma. From this begets form. What is form? Science calls it mass. And mass is what? It's a definition of states of energy. If you look at an element chart in a science class, with all the elements, iron, gold, silver, helium, nitrogen, thorium, whatever, what you're looking at is an alphabetical device of identifying something, some atom, and with its nuclear weight and its magnetic charge, electrical charge, its valence. And there's another piece of information I can't think of right now. The number of protons, electrons. It's been a long time. Anyway, so the element chart is a very useful thing for glancing at what we identify and discriminate as different forms of energy, mass. And we give them all names. Because if you got rupa, you gotta got nama. Nama rupa. Name and form. They go together. That egolessness is the true doctrine, follows from the non-existence of beings. The advocate of non-ego is a destroyer causing even the cessation of the vijnana. There are 4 abodes of it. How does it arise from non-existence of form? As there is nothing existent inwardly or outwardly, no vijnanas arise. The theorizers wish to see the skandhas in the middle existence. Likewise, they wish a being born in the world of formlessness is of no form. What else is there? Yeah, this whole negation of thing, it's... Did I skip a page? What did I do to myself here? So, lest I repeat myself over and over again, what characterizes the Buddha is knowledge, jnana. It is devoid of the deficits of intellection. It is an insight attained by self-realization. It is removed from all defects. The dedicated life is not found in those especially who are deaf, blind, one-eyed, dumb, aged, young, nor in those who are given up to the feeling of enmity. The world ruler is endowed with the celestial marks and the secondary characteristics, though not manifested. They become, however, manifested in some of the homeless monks and not in anybody else. So it is declared. After the passing of the leader of the Shakyas, these will follow me. Vyasya, okay, now he's talking about, yeah, that's not going to be helpful. Yeah, he's just taking every opportunity from every angle to really state the same thing. So I don't want to bore you. I think you've got to say that the passions are quieted and destroyed apart from right reasoning and scriptural teaching is the view and discourse of the philosophers, which is not to be practiced by the intelligent. So this idea of removal, chasing the void, you know who I'm talking about, trying to quiet the mind and quiet desires for everything. That creeps into Nichiren's interpretations of Nichiren and even in the Lotus Sutra, but that's not what it's about. It's the recognition of those things, that they do exist. We don't quiet the mind. Hell, we engage it fully. We sit at attention in front of our mandala to invoke and instantiate our mind. We just alter that perception. We awaken that perception, like waking from a dream. It's our alarm clock. And when we awaken it, we take full advantage of the mind, because that's what samsara is for. It's just that normally in samsara, all life is suffering. Why is all life suffering? Because the mind is creating a false understanding of the world through its massive delineations, discriminations, differentiations, that with that same mind, we can turn it on to 11 and we can see the nature of all of that without being sucked into it. Once again, the rapids come to mind. We can observe and experience the might of the rapids, the power of the rapids. Certainly, the closer you get to them, if you've ever been close to some real rapids, the sound is it's so loud. It bodily affects you. At the power, it's just water running over rocks. And no matter how closely you perceive it, you still aren't in it. If you're in a little tiny boat, a kayak, and you're navigating those rocks with the water tossing you every which way and turning you over, your experience of the rapids is massively different. I promise you. But watch the rapids from a distance. Get close so you can see the nature of the power there and the potential, but then get far away and look at them with the memory, the remembering of that up close. You don't have to be in it. You can be awestruck by it rather than struck in the head by it. You see, it's the same thing, but it's experienced completely differently. Buddha mind. This whole book is the definition of that. Yeah, tendencies and conditions comes up in so many various ways. Habit, energy, as cause, all things are born in accordance with conditions of causation. Karma. So, I don't know what I'll do next on the Lankavatara. Maybe I can find that quote in here where he gets pissed off at Mahamati and says, stop adhering to the words. Think of the meaning. Amazing book. But, we don't have to go through all of that intellectualization. All we need to do is chant Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. But understand, when we chant Namo Myoho Renge Kyo, we are invoking all of this. So once again, how much greater, how much deeper our appreciation for the Lotus Sutra, for the attitude and intent of the Lotus Sutra, for the attitude and intent of Shakyamuni rescuing all of humanity, all sentient beings, from their imaginary world, which provides only stress, anxiety, pain, suffering. How amazing is it to have these 7 or 5 characters to open that door of wisdom so immediately. And Nichiren comes along to really nail it home. Really, listen, that's what this lotus is about. This is what Shakyamuni realized and was trying his entire life to get others to realize. That is his bodhisattva path. All right. I've gone on a while here, so we'll call it a day. Congratulations. You're practicing correctly. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. What an amazing practice you have. Thank you for listening, watching, downloading podcasts. Like, subscribe, share, all of that stuff. My patrons, as always, thank you so much. And I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.